It's so good to see you all today. Oh my goodness, the time has just gone by so fast. And I can't believe we have come to our final partner meeting of the Mentoring Plus 19 cohort. So it's wonderful to be in the space with you all today. Full disclosure, the technology is just having a field day with my computer today. So just a heads up, if you see me coming in and out, it is not because I don't want to be here, but that there are some technology challenges going on. But again, welcome, and we're so happy to be with you. We do want to take a moment to acknowledge the lives that were lost in the racially motivated mass murder of 10 people and the wounding of 13 altogether in Buffalo, New York, recognizing that we don't do this work in a vacuum, that the work of mentorship and bringing communities together means that we're all likely impacted by what's happening in our community. So we want to take a moment to acknowledge the lives that were lost and acknowledge that as members of the global community, we are impacted by that as well. So thank you all for being here in the midst of all the things that are going on and continue to go on and impact us all. And thank you so, so much for the amazing and important work that you all are doing to create safety nets and places for families and communities to come together to connect. And for youth to come to space and be seen and heard and appreciated. So again, welcome. Thank you for being here. And I'm going to pass it on to Uwan to get us started for today.
Yes, so today being our final partner meeting, our agenda is going to be somewhat light, but hopefully interactive, especially towards the second half of our time together. We're going to review some important deadlines, important considerations as we're closing out the grant, some activities that we think it's important for you to keep in mind. But after we do that, we're going to start talking about some highlights and some lessons learned. We're really going to encourage all of us to tap into our collective genius, to acknowledge what we did, what enabled that success, but also to think, how do we create a stepping stone from our experience for future M+ cohorts? So I'm looking forward to the conversation and the activity that will come up from that. Then we're going to wrap up our time together today, go into some next steps, and then say so long in partnership, saying so long. So with that, we're going to start talking about just important reminders for the grant closeout. Throughout this entire time, feel free to go off mute, feel free to put questions in the chat. The idea of this review is not present any information that should be new. All of this is information that has already been sent out to you, that you should have already in front of you, that you should be familiar with, but that we really think it's important to review and also have an opportunity to answer any of your questions. So feel free to go off mute at any time. So starting off with the timeline. So as of today, there's only one important timeline to consider for the month of May, which is May 31st, the last day that program costs can be incurred under MSMI, under M+. So if you're still having celebrations, activities, recognition events, and if you have the budget already allotted for those activities, we hope a lot of those activities are successful and fun, but also if you would like to modify your budget to be able to spend down some of your funds, you'll have until June 10th to turn in the budget modification as you're thinking about how to spend down those funds by May 31st. In June, there's 3 important dates. June 10th, as I just mentioned, is the last day to turn in your budget modification. Some of you have already been sending that in. Thank you. For those of you that have not and are interested in modifying your budget, that is by June 10th. Generally speaking, if your budget modification is under 10% of your overall grant, there is no need to receive approval. You can just go ahead and do that. But if it is over 10%, you have until June 10th to send that in. The second important day in June is the 20th, which is your final SMFR that is due. Please make sure that you label it as final. It's just part of what we request just administratively. And the last day you'll see is June 30th with a couple of things due that day. So one of those being your final project report. You should already have received a template for this, but knowing that most of you carry a lot on your plate, if that got lost in your inbox, if it got lost in the shuffle, please reach out to us so we can get that template to you. Another thing that is due at the end of June is all the IMS data. So hopefully your data will be as complete as it should by the end of the month. Hopefully June is just a month where you're doing just minor tweaks, minor changes, hopefully something that doesn't feel like you're having to run around like a headless chicken to update IMS. So you'll have access to IMS until the end of June, but we believe that by the end of May, most of your data worries should be taken care of. But just again, IMS will be open until the end of June. Also, June 30th is when we would appreciate that you complete the M+ survey. This is the survey specifically for you as a program, so we can get a sense of how this was for you. What is some feedback that you have? What are some highlights? So that is also due June 30th. And the last thing, is the form that will let us know if you do or do not plan to continue using the M+ brand and logo. We'll talk about more details about that in a couple of slides, but just quick review of what this looks like for May or June. So going into a little bit more detail about some financial considerations. Anything that you have purchased, any supplies that you have purchased under MSMI, under Mentoring Plus grant, that's for you to keep. That's for your program. So just going back, if there is any events that are coming up by May 31st, that is an opportunity for you to purchase materials that you can use beyond May 31st, beyond June 30th. Full permission to do that. I will continue to give huge kudos to the team in West Virginia who bought black lights and does bingo, blacklight bingo or bowling. I think that's awesome, knowing that is a little tiny set of materials that can completely revamp almost any event. So inspired by the team out in West Virginia, go ahead and consider what are some of those opportunities that you have to make sure that these supplies that you purchase continue to enhance and strengthen the services that you will continue to offer beyond the grant. Again, your final SMFR for the month of May should be marked as final and is due Monday, June 20th. This final reimbursement will be released after finances and program closeout is complete and approved. If all of the money is not spent, Youth Collaboratory will send a grantee's release deobligating Youth Collaboratory from any future financial obligations. So that's pretty much all we have to just remind to keep top of mind for financial. Any questions about financial closeout activities? All right, so thinking about evaluation, another important set of closeout activities. So please complete all of the surveys, SOR, PYD, parent and caregiver survey. Regardless if this is the 3-month mark, 6-month mark, or 12-month mark of a match, please mark all of these exit surveys as program exit for the time frame. I will review that a little bit more in the next slide. But essentially, all mentees and mentors that have met for at least 9 months should be exited from M+ and the IMS. Being exited is different than being unenrolled. So we're not unenrolling anyone from the IMS. Exiting is essentially just putting an end date to the match. All of the evaluation, all the programmatic documents, please keep them for 4 years. Keep them in a confidential and retrievable location for 4 years, which would be May of 2026. So going into a little bit more detail about exiting matches from IMS. So here's a little, hopefully a handy tool, a handy time frame of which match should be labeled as how in IMS. That was worded in a slightly confusing way, which is why visuals might make it a little bit easier. So if a match has been meeting for less than 9 months, those ongoing matches remain open. There's no need to exit them from the IMS. They stay as open, and there's no need to complete an exit survey. But if they're at the 3, 6, or 12-month mark, those surveys should still be in the IMS. But if they have already completed those, there is no need to add another layer or another round of exit interviews. If a match is between the 9 to 12-month period, then you should enter the match end date, which is technically how you close or exit a match from the IMS. Please use May 31st of 2022 as that date and complete the exit surveys. If a match has been meeting for longer than 12 months, please also use May 31st, 2022 as the end date of the match, and there is no need to complete the surveys, the exit surveys, if they have been recently completed, which is that March 2022 date. If it's longer than that, please complete the surveys. Now, this is a lot of if this, then that. So just adding a little bit of space for questions or point of clarification. You're welcome, Megan. Hopefully it's useful. Will the visuals be emailed? Yes, you will receive a copy of this. If not, feel free to take a screenshot of this portion of your screen. But it might be useful to think of this as 3 different bubbles. Bubble number 1, matches that have been meeting under 9 months. Bubble number 2, 9 to 12 months. Bubble number 3, greater than 12 months. But again, one of the more important considerations here is that exiting a match is not unenrolling a match. So please make sure that as you're doing that, you're primarily looking at managing match history, entering an end date, and entering that end date being May 31st, 2022. All right, so if no more questions, we'll go into some other considerations for closeout. So storage of records. So all programmatic records must be kept in a confidential manner and retrievable until May 31st, 2026. So that's about 4 years that we're asking for programmatic records, but also all financial records that support your SMFRs for the program must also be kept in a confidential and retrievable manner until May 2026. For matches that will go beyond the life of the grant, if your program will not provide match support to these matches, you must submit a plan for how these matches that are ongoing will be transferred into another program to receive support. If your program will continue supporting matches in-house, you can also explain that in the program report, in the final program report. But essentially, the main thing that we're requesting is for matches that will continue meeting, how will they be supported? Whether it's in-house or with another program, please make sure that you just give us a sense of how matches are coming to a close or how they will be supported if that's not the case. Please make sure that you include that in your final progress report, program report, sorry. Finally, some considerations around using Mentoring Plus name and logo. We know that the Mentoring Plus program, the infrastructure, the enhancements of M+, have really informed the way you build relationship and build community with your program participants. Some of these enhancements have built really strong partnerships, really strong relationships. Some of these enhancements also miss the mark to the needs of your community. There are some matches that don't need monthly contacts, for example. So what we're hoping moving forward is that if you plan to keep doing M+ as you have been doing for these last 2 years, or if you're going to do some modified version of it, all we request is that you provide 6-month updates. So updates on a semi-annual basis of how that is going. We will be sending you a form. Actually, I believe you have already received a form where you give us a sense if you will not be using the Mentoring Plus brand and logo, or if you will be, what are the enhancements? What are the elements of M+ that you anticipate to be implementing? And again, if you are doing that, please make sure that you consider 4 things that are important to continue using the M+. 1, these must be for one-to-one matches. So still maintaining that one-to-one model. Second, please be specific about which enhancements you will be using. Please let us know which ones, whether it's the parent/caregiver engagement, whether it's ongoing mentor training and support. Again, you don't need to use all of the infrastructure, all of the enhancements, but please let us know which one it is. Third, those progress reports. So on a semi-annual basis, we'll just hear from you an update of how those enhancements, how that implementation is going on. And finally, is to continue to be a youth collaboratory organizational member that is in good standing. Selfishly, that would make me really excited, these last 2 points, so we can continue being in partnership, so we can continue being in good relationship. But again, this is optional. If M+ has offered everything that you need and you're ready to move on, that's also perfectly fine. No hard feelings as a result of that. Let me see. Yeah, I believe that's all the considerations, all the reminders, sort of the administrative high level part of our time together today. Before moving on, any questions, any points of clarification? All right, so I'll hand it over to Joy so you can start talking about some highlights and lessons learned from our time together.
Thank you so much, Yvonne. And again, so good to be here with you all today. We have been through a time, right? We have been connected to one another during a time that has been some of the most interesting times in the recent history, right? They'll be writing about this in the history books. So I'd like to get us started with thinking about where we started. We can go on to the next slide. So you all were notified in late 2019 that you were awarded a grant, and that we were so excited was going to help build capacity of the amazing work that you are already doing in your communities. So we had big plans for 2020, 21, even 2022. And shortly thereafter, specifically in March, all of those plans changed or had to be changed. We were all hit with a new reality and a different way of going about things. From the pandemic to the impacts of the pandemic, schools closing down, many things closing down, staff turnover, so many things shifted in 2020. And so I just wanted to pause and really just acknowledge the work that you all have been able to do in the midst of it, a time that was not business as usual. These last couple of years have not been that, but in the midst of it, you all have um, always been important centers of your community. But we have watched mentoring programs move from being focused on that one-to-one match to being focused on supporting and providing resources for families. Many of your programs have done work that's not even documented. It's not in IMS, it's not in MatchForce, it's not in your innovative system, it's not in paper files, about the amount of shepherding to resources, of being safe spaces, of doing the things that needed to get done to be sure that your community members felt supported. And so I think that that has afforded us the opportunity to build some strong relationships that are unique to this M+19 cohort. You should know that TA Thursday was not a fully realized thing until you all let us know that it was helpful to be in community with one another, to hear about how people were navigating through these many challenges that had been experienced. And we were learning how to pivot from in-person to virtual, learning how to move from on-site mentoring and services to, all types of things. And so I just want to say again that it has been a humbling and amazing journey to walk alongside you all as you all have continued to be a resource and become even stronger resources for your communities in the midst of the last 2 years. So thank you for that privilege and honor. I'd like to move on to the next slide to reflect back a little bit of the work of the M+19 cohort. So of the mentoring, when you look at the locations and you can see the various types of places that you all have been able to provide mentoring in main cities, in suburban areas, in rural areas. And I want to shout out West Virginia again, and also Lyft and Jackson Street for the work that you all have done in getting to those rural communities in the pandemic, speaking up for the things that are happening there. When we were having conversation about the technology gap, some of you were saying, well, the technology doesn't matter if the Wi-Fi isn't there. So, a lot of us are learning from these last couple of years and what is meant for people who have already been displaced, for folks who have already been considered at the margins. And we've learned a lot from you all in the rural communities about what the pandemic has meant for people in those environments. And I remember hearing from you, Becky, of like getting in your car and going to drive out to people's homes to do your monthly check-ins because you knew they couldn't get there and you knew they didn't have a phone. And so you would take some food and go sit in the front yard and talk to people. And so these are promising practices. So a lot of what you hear us talk about in the mentoring world are these evidence-based practices and evidence-informed, but you're starting to hear more about the promising practices and best practices. And these are the practices that are going to be helpful to help us shift the mentoring and youth services fields into ways of doing this work that works for everyone. So I just want to highlight those of you in your communities who have been really going above and beyond and wanted to mention that. Activities. The M+19 cohort has provided 8,724 one-on-one match activities, 6,399 check-ins, and 225 quarterly family events, 398 match activities. This is no small feat. A lot of the times in the mentoring world, we are looking at match goals and match numbers and how many people, how many new relationships were made, and comparing to last year. And it can sound a little transactional, but I wanted to pause here and look at the amount of staying in community, keeping in touch that you all have done in a time where keeping in touch is literally keeping people alive. So we're not doing it just to improve grades or just to be sure that people have high self-esteem. We are doing it to build communities and stay in contact with one another. And you all have really gone above and beyond. Change Happens, that's located in Houston, has created opportunities for people to come together and talk about health at a time when all of us are focused on what is the CDC saying. This is new, right? Over the last couple of years, the everyday person is quoting the Center for Disease Control. And so creating opportunities for community members to come together and talk about holistic well-being and what it means to them and what a bad day feels like, and some opportunities for mitigating stress is so very powerful. Again, these are life-giving activities, so we want to lift that up at Change Happens. So much good happening all across the board. So thank you for that. I also don't want to miss Greater Wyoming. That's doing a lot of good work in the rural community too. Also in a community that is largely, has a lot of military presence. And so they have a unique opportunity and challenge of providing mentoring in an area that has a large military presence and has figured out a way to do that that's interesting for the military and also the families that are military adjacent in their communities. So there's so many good little pockets of information, and we look forward to reflecting that out more to you between now and September, and we'll talk more about that soon. When we look at the total number of matches, it's amazing. So 1,128 mentors match and 1,151 mentees, which I think is really amazing. The other thing that's really amazing that's happened over this last couple of years with OJJDP and from Youth Collaboratory in response to the things that you all spoke to us about is that you see on this chart here that it says that we have 7 trans or non-binary mentees and 4 trans and non-binary mentors. This is something that we were not reporting on previously to this cohort. So we have a far ways to go in terms of equity, in terms of gender equity, and in terms of moving away from binary measures of gender within mentoring reporting systems and youth services systems. But the fact that we are reporting this data, even though people are not asking for it, we're building into our systems. When we're creating Salesforce systems and IMS systems, we're saying we need to collect this information, which means we also need to disaggregate it and pull it apart and look at the effectiveness of our programs on people of diverse identities. So thank you all for being a driving force of advancing equity within the youth services field, within data and data analytics and mentoring. So it's not something that we said was a goal that set out, but you all did. And we're getting there slowly and surely. So just wanted to acknowledge you all for all of the work that's happening within the work. And I'd like to go to the next slide, please. So looking at why it mattered. Why did all of this work matter at a time like this? Look at the protective factors that are happening here. Look at the community involvement, the sense of self-efficacy, and the strong relational skills and academic interest. So in sitting in on some of the webinars and meetings that I've had a chance to frequent over the last year and a half or so, it's been very interesting to listen to people describe. They're clearly not coming from a mentoring plus family framework in terms of using strength-based languages, but referring to students as going through a period of apathy, and going through a period of just kind of hopelessness. And I am inspired by the protective factors that we see here, that connection to community members, connection to each other, to other peers, actually increases those protective factors and increases or encourages that engagement with academics, but also just enjoyment of life and self-efficacy. So again, I can't reiterate enough that the work that you are doing and the positive impacts or outcomes that you are encouraging were always important prior to the pandemic, always good things. But within the landscape of these last couple of years, even more so. And I know that it has not always been easy. And I know that you all have been worked through many challenges. I want to put a plug in here for self-care, more on that later. But I just want to again acknowledge you all for all the amazing work and reflect back to why it's been so important beyond the terms of the grant and the match goals and all of the things that we ask you to report on. It's the creating communities that work for everyone and expanding protective factors for youth and their families and including them in the process. So thank you again for all of your amazing work and efforts. And just like Yvonne mentioned, we look forward to maintaining our sense of community and keeping in touch beyond the term of this grant. And with that, I'll pass it over to Yvonne for the next portion.
Yeah, I'm actually very, very excited about this next portion because we just talked about what we did and why it mattered. But as most conversations around data, there's so many stories behind almost any percentage that we share or any concrete number that we share with you. We know that every single one of those percentage numbers or every single one of those tallies could be an entire story. And so we kind of want to turn it over to you so that we can start sharing those stories with each other. And what we're going to do is we're going to go into breakouts. Now, I know that May has been very busy for many of you. The year has been very busy for many of you. This week has also been particularly heavy. So if you're feeling completely tapped out and you would much rather engage with these questions on your own, please send a message directly to Benita using the chat feature. Go ahead and look for Benita Ramsey's name and send her a message that you would much rather sit this one out. And we will be placing you in a silent room with no mic and no camera expectations. But for the rest of us, we're going to go into small breakouts of groups of 3 or 4 and we're gonna do this twice. The first breakout is going to focus on the first 2 questions. How did M+ influence your programming over the past 2 years? And what is a story, a picture, or comment from implementing M+ that made you feel proud of what your team accomplished? What made that success possible? And what we're going to do, let me pull up a Padlet. We're going to share with you this Padlet. Let me put it in the chat. And if I could just get a quick thumbs up from someone, just randomly click the plus button and make sure that we have permissions all set up and correct, just to make sure this is something that you all can contribute to. Thank you, Leslie. So we're just going to focus on these first 2 questions first. And I'm going to ask for about 3 different roles per breakout. First one is the interviewee, the person that's going to be answering these questions for their program. The second one is the interviewer. I'm going to be asking that this question is asked individually to each person before they answer it. And this interviewer is also going to be the person responsible for capturing your colleague's answer into this virtual wall. And then the third optional role is a timekeeper. We're going to be in this breakout for about 14 minutes or so, and we want to make sure everyone has an opportunity to share equally. So interviewer, you're going to ask this question to one of your colleagues, and you're going to be tracking answer on this Padlet virtual wall. Person 2, interviewee, you're the person answering the question. And then timekeeper. These 3 roles should be rotating the entire time. So everyone should have the opportunity to be an interviewer, a timekeeper, and an interviewee in your breakout group. Again, we're focusing on just the first 2 questions. Full permission, especially for the second picture around a picture or a story. If you have a picture to share, please upload that into the wall. If you have a video that you want to share, please go ahead and upload that. So before we go into a breakout, any questions to clarify what we're about to do? All right, so Benita's just checking in. Are we ready for breakouts?
1 second.
Like I said, I'm actually very excited for this because this is when we start identifying patterns and themes. So very excited to see what you all share. Joy and I will be hopping in and out of rooms throughout this whole time. So if we hop into your room, treat us as fly on the walls. No need to interrupt, no need to pause. If we jump out, we're not trying to be rude. We're just wanting to make sure that we check in with folks across this virtual room. Once we're ready, we'll go into our breakouts, and then we'll see you in a little bit. Thank you, Benita. All right, y'all, we'll see you in a bit. So you all should see an invitation to join a room. You can go ahead and click the blue button that says join once you see your room. If you would like a little bit of help to be moved into your room, we also have the ability to do that on our end, so feel free to go off mic. For those of you that would prefer to be in a quiet room, feel free to let us know, and we can also go ahead and put you in a quiet room. All right, I'm going to hop into rooms 1, 2, and 3. Enjoy.
Click no one is in 5 or 6.
Yes,
it's only 1, 2, or 3.
Yeah, that's on purpose. Just I had to even them out, so I emptied out those rooms and put people in other rooms.
So smart, so smart. I'll just take 1 and 2 then.
Okay, and I'll do 3 and 4.
Hi, Yolanda. Do you need help getting into a room, or do you want to be in a quiet room? Hi, Alberta. I'm not sure if you heard the instructions from Yvonne, but we're doing breakout sessions right now with an activity. Were you in a breakout room, or would you prefer to go into the quiet room where you don't participate in this activity?
Yes, let me go into the quiet room because
Okay.
I just got back on here.
Okay, I'll put you in
All
that
right.
room.
All righty.
Hi, Alberta, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
I'm sorry, this is Amanda. Yeah, I'll prefer a quiet room if you don't mind. I'm on a long distance call with my mother. I'm so sorry.
No, no worries. I will put you in there now.
Okay, thank you.
I put a timer on my end. We're at about 3 minutes in,
Okay.
and I just hopped into one room, and I think I could have explained it a lot better. People are like, what do I do? What do I do?
No, I think it was great. So, and I was doing the rooms. I'm like, I don't know if they changed the time. It should be 15 minutes, right?
I didn't see a timer when I jumped into the room. I think it's fine. I think we can just broadcast a message at the halfway mark and say about so 13 divided by 2 is 6.5. So
So I'm seeing, so the time, I have a timer on my end. It's saying we're about 5 minutes in. So the timer is really small. So sometimes people do miss it. It's like at the very top or the
maybe I
bottom,
missed it.
but it's like really, really small. So we can still broadcast a message when people have like 6.5.
Yeah, I think just at the halfway mark.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
I'm gonna hop in the 4. I'll be back.
And I'm gonna go into 3. I will be right back. So we'll continue. We'll continue sitting in relative silence until folks join. All right. So I think all of us are back here now. Welcome back, everyone. Thank you for jumping on. It was really great. I don't know if great is the best word. It's always amazing to see how instructions or just a little bit of direction can lead to so many different structures. So it really feels like each group really took this activity and made it your own, which is really great to see. So we focused on the first 2 questions. I know that some of you went through the entire interview, asked all 4 questions. You were having it like ready to make an entire report. But for now, we're just going to focus on the first 2. How did M+ influence your programming over the past 2 years? And what is a story that made you feel proud, that made that success possible? And I would like to hear from a couple of you, but not necessarily speaking from your own program. What is something that you heard from one of your peers, from one of your colleagues, as they were sharing their answers that stood out to you? What is something what were some influences from M+ in their program? What were some successes that you heard that you would like to share with the group? And feel free to just go off mic.
This is Cheryl Hughes, and I can go first. So one of the young ladies, and I forget her name, I'm so sorry, but she said that the forms that were used were very helpful to her program, because most programs have these long books that parents have to complete, and the forms were really good. They weren't as long. They got to the point. And, you know, that helped their program a long way. So the forms, and she did say that they were going to continue using some of the forms. So it was a plus for us as well, because we are one of the ones that had the big book for an application.
Thank you for sharing, Ms. Sherilyn. And yes, many times a lot of those long applications make sense, but also sometimes it's a question of accessibility, knowing that folks, we sometimes just need limited, specific, good information, and that's sometimes enough. So I'm very glad to hear that was a positive impact, that had a positive influence. Anyone else who would like to share what they heard for this first breakout?
Someone in our group talked about how the family engagement activities were really formative for their agency, and it's something that they really enjoyed and used a lot of the photos from, and are continuing that process going forward. So it seems like having that consistent activity monthly really helped connect them to the matches, but also to one another.
Yay, can't say that enough. As Joy and I and our team gets the privilege to meet with a lot of parents and mentors and mentees during monitoring visits, one of the things that stands out to me consistently is the positive impact on families, not just on young people. So I'm very, very happy to hear that was a positive influence, a positive impact. And if we think back to the slide that said why this mattered, that 70% of youth in the M+ program mentioned family as a protective factor, we might see how creating spaces for young people, for families to be part of our program, to build relationship, to strengthen relationship, there's a little bit of synchronicity there. Having family events, knowing that family is a protective factor could be really important. So thank you, Megan, for sharing. Maybe one more person to share something that they heard in their breakout.
I'll go. We had a lady, I'm sorry, I can't remember your name either, but I thought it was really cute. She said that the mentor had pizza delivered to the mentees when they were doing virtual. He had the pizza delivered to the mentee's house, and he also had pizza, and they were able to have a virtual meeting. And most of us have had that experience in our programs where, you know, the mentor got creative and did something like, you know, have food delivered to them. Even though they're not able to see them in person, they're still, you know, showing like, hey, I care, and I care about us. Even though we are not in person, I care about us getting together still. So I just thought that was really sweet and creative to do. So
shout outs to sharing food, specifically pizza. I think pizza is often celebrated in elementary schools, middle schools, maybe a little bit of high school, but I am a lifelong pizza lover. So anytime I hear that makes my own little pizza loving heart very happy. But also being able to see the resilience of our communities, knowing that our programs had to adapt to sort of the pandemic, shutdown, unrest, and being able to see how it wasn't just something that we did, it's also that our matches did. And being able to recognize almost that ripple effect. Thank you for sharing. So we're going to go back into our breakouts. I saw that some of you went into those questions 3 and 4. Let me start sharing my screen again. We're going to go back into our breakout. Here. And we're now going to focus on the last 2 questions. If you already went through these questions in your group, no worries, because we're going to do this with a brand new group anyway. So we're going to shuffle. You're going to get to interact with new folks. And this time we're going to focus on the last 2 questions. These questions are, what is something that future M+ cohorts should know about? And here is when we are tapping into your now expertise as a M+ member. So thinking about what are the things that you wish you knew before you started M+, whether it's about focusing on partnerships before starting formal matches, building specific types of relationships, building specific types of policies and practices. I know that the monitoring visit has shifted a lot. Is there anything that you wish you knew ahead of time regarding monitoring? So what is something that future M+ cohorts should know about? Really tapping into your expertise of implementing and carrying this grant out for the last 2 years. And then the last question which I heard a little bit of conversation about. What is one thing your program will continue integrating beyond the current grant, and why? And for this fourth question, you can think about specific enhancements that you might be thinking that you will continue to integrate, but it could also just be something that is not related directly to M+, but came as a result of M+. And it's something that you didn't anticipate that would come up, but you appreciated the opportunity, the lesson, the process, and you're just going to continue integrating. Also, just for the sake of being fair, it's possible that you think that it's great that M+ is coming to an end and you are not looking forward to implementing anything further. That's also fair. That's also fine. But with that, we're going to go again into our breakout. In this case, since we already had a conversation, we're only going to be there for 10 minutes. So the time is going to be a little bit shorter, a little bit brief. Again, we encourage a timekeeper to make sure everyone has an opportunity. We encourage that everyone is asked the question directly, and that the person who's keeping track of the notes is not the person who's answering the question. So that interviewer, the person answering the question, that you're the person summarizing the answer on behalf of the person who is answering. So with that, we'll see you in about 10 minutes, and I look forward to seeing what you all come up with. I'm going to go for some water. I will be right back.
So just a few more seconds, we're going to allow folks to filter back into the main room. Welcome back, everyone. All right. So similar to how we did for our last debrief conversation, we love to hear about some of your responses, some of the responses that you heard while you were in breakouts from the last two questions. So let's start with the first of these two, which is, what is something that future M+ cohorts should know about? We'd love to hear from a couple of you on what you heard from your group members. What stood out from your conversations? Something that future M+ cohorts should know about?
I can start, Joy.
Go for it.
So I think something that all three of us said, we're all Big Brothers Big Sisters agencies, so we have, a separate platform that we utilize too. So we all just talked about the importance of going in with a really strong plan and an understanding of what the needs were and where some duplication might need to happen, or where some different development of resources or trainings would need to happen for the M+, so that we were all set for go time when we started, was one of the things we would want to share.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that, Leslie. How about others? I see some great comments in the Padlet. I'll lift it up. Survey collection can be difficult, especially for families and youth. I think that plays into a bit of, Leslie, your comment of like having a plan, knowing that there may be some things that have to take place that folks may not be doing or may be already doing, and feeling a need to kind of double the doubling of work is what I'm hearing there. And documentation. Mm-hmm. Sure. Any other things that maybe aren't in Padlet that you heard that you think are really important for future cohorts to know?
I can share something, Joy. I was saying that I really like the resources on the Youth Collab's website, and in the future, I would say for cohorts to really pay attention, because initially I, overlooked a lot of the resources, and I was like, oh, wow, I didn't really, when I took the time to fully go through the website, there were more resources than I realized. And so I said, well, initially I should have taken the time to fully, go through and see what all the website had to offer. And so that's what I would suggest. And it was kind of unanimous that we all agreed about that.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's something that we can do a better job of lifting up at the beginning. I think this again was a unique cohort where when we would have been kind of planning and having the spaces to not just react, but respond by taking time to lean into materials that many of us were just trying to figure out how to stay afloat. But I appreciate your mentioning that and taking some time on our website and looking through those resources. We definitely have a plethora of those available to any one of you who wants to access it. For this final question, what is one thing your program will continue integrating beyond the current grant and why? We'd love to hear what some of you took away from your conversation with others there.
Joy, several of us in our group had mentioned taking away the family engagement piece because that's a really good enhancement that we felt like we should continue.
Thank you for that. How about others?
I agree with the last young lady about the family events. It was as much fun for the families that they were able to get more involved with the mentor and the mentee relationship, just coming together as a whole group. And we did, during COVID, of course, we did a drive-by. And not a drive-by, whatever you call it, drive-through, but not a drive-by, that sounds dangerous. But anyhow, that, that really, those families really enjoyed that. Some of them did get out of their car when they heard the music, but it was a fun activity. And I think that I know that we will continue that. We will also continue building more partnerships. That's important for the other cohorts to know, you never have enough partners on your team. So those are two things that we're going to continue doing here at Volunteers of America.
That is awesome. Thank you for sharing that. It's so amazing and wonderful to hear that people are wanting to continue those connections with families because it is so vital. And it's not always that everyone in the family is eligible for the program. There may be brothers and sisters and cousins and chosen family that's around and may not be in the match, but would so benefit from being around the other matches and the families and youth there. So that's really exciting for us to hear that folks are considering continuing that or continuing to do that if that's something that you've been in practice of before. And also just want to really also lift up the piece around collaboration, that creating those safety networks, as most of you know, as we have asked you 152,000 questions about the MOUs and the LOAs and the types of partners that you have and the diversity of the partners that you have. And we asked to interview the partners, that we do hope to build strong networks of continuously communicating beyond just the individuals. We know that when people leave organizations, sometimes they take their whole Rolodex. I'm dating myself as I do have a physical Rolodex, but they take their contacts with them. And we've learned over the last couple of years how important it is to be sure that the organization has access to those contacts so that the families don't lose resources or miss out on those opportunities because one person may no longer be within the agency or organization anymore. So thank you so much, Ms. Sherlyn, for bringing that up. Very, very exciting. If you haven't had a chance yet, maybe after this presentation, I would encourage you all to take a look in the Padlet, and we'll also be sure to share it out with you afterwards.
Yes. So as we start transitioning now into the wrap up, the last moments of our call, just taking a deep breath, a moment to let all of these connections, lessons, and celebrations to marinate. It's outside of the mentoring world. If we look outside to everything else that's going on around us, it can be difficult for young people to feel seen, to feel heard, to feel respected. And it's something that it seems like your programs have consistently prioritized and created a place for connection for the last 2 years. So just really taking a time to say, thank you, well done, we did it, we've done this. Because again, looking outside, there's not a lot of spaces for young people to see themselves or to see places, to feel seen, to feel heard, to feel respected, to feel accepted. So just gonna hold 5 seconds for all of this to really just seep in and stand on its own. With that, I'm gonna take a deep breath, go on to the next slide, and pass it over to Joy.
Thank you, Yvonne. My computer is doing that. I'm slowly going to fade on you. So bear with me, you all, as we get through these final few slides together. And we can advance to the next slide. That will be perfect. So as you know, the last date of the matches and all of the things that we talked about in May are coming to a heel. And in June, there are some remaining activities that are required of you all. To turn in your budget modification if you need to. It's not required that you do that. That's only if you need to make a modification on your existing budget. Your final SMFR is due June 20th. As Yvonne mentioned, please be sure to label it final. Your final project report will be due June 30th. I bet you all are so sad that that will be the last report that you have to send on over to us with regard to M+. I am being sarcastic. And ensure that all data is updated in the IMS. We will likely reach out if we see any gaps in data in an effort to tell the fullest picture story that we can about the work that you all put in over these last 36 months. Well, what will be 36 months by the time we turn this report in. So if it seems like we're nagging you a little bit, it's only because we want to brag to OJJDP. We want to reflect back as thoroughly as possible all of your efforts and the work that you have done on this project. Be sure to complete the M+ survey by June 30th and also submit the sign form regarding use of the M+ brand or logo. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out and we will do our best to respond promptly with any information that you need. And also feel free always to reach out to us. You have our contact information. It has been such a pleasure to work alongside and be in community with you all in our efforts to really lean in and do what we can to create the community that our youth deserve through mentoring and building community and engaging with families. I can't thank you enough for letting me in on your, I feel like even though we haven't done any site visits, that I've kind of been there in context to get to know a little bit more about the communities that you work in, that you're situated in, that you're passionate about working alongside. So thank you for all you are doing, for who you are in this work. We know that this is work that's driven by passionate individuals and folks who care deeply about their communities. So thank you. And it's not over yet. We got a little bit of work left to do. Hang on in there, take care of yourself. I hope you're getting some vitamin D where there's sun and having some warm hot chocolate where it's cold. And we look forward to being in community. Again, in other ways, we are still very much connected. So with that, we'd like to wish you a wonderful remainder of your day and week. But before we do that, please be sure to fill out the evaluation. let us know how we did here for today and any feedback that you have for us. Feel free to copy that link into another browser, as we will shortly close this one, and we want to be sure that you have access to that evaluation link. Okay.
A brief little final shout out to our colleague, Benita Ramsey, who has been in the back scenes of all of these virtual meetings, making sure that this is as smooth as possible. So even though you get to see us and we are the ones who get to talk your ears off, Benita, who is here with us and has been with us in these last couple of meetings, really just saying thank you to her and sort of bringing her on stage virtually to say thank you, the three of us saying thank you for joining us in this virtual space, knowing that ideally it would be in person, but being able to make do with what we have here. Actually, these would probably still happen virtually. So making do with what we have here with these in virtually. So thank you so much. We look forward to reading your feedback, your suggestions. And like Joy said, we'll be in touch in these next couple of weeks. This is definitely not goodbye.